We're recording. Welcome everyone to the next installment of Let's Talk Horses, Life and Living. I can't believe my guest today. Oh my Lord, my very, very good friend, the co-creator of Access Consciousness, world-renowned author, presenter, amazing guy, Dr. Dain Heer. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. I'm just going to record that. I'm going to just take that snippet and put it on my wake up alarm.
I'm like, how do you even introduce a man like you?
Oh, you're the best.
I hope I did it a little bit of justice.
It was wonderful.
So I always love starting out when I have a guest on that's not been on before and ask you the question, how did horses come into your life?
Oh my goodness. Best question ever so far on any podcast ever so far. I met Gary Douglas, the founder of Access. We started, I started doing sessions on him and he would work on me and it was just miraculous. And one day I called him and I was like, hey, can I ask you about some stuff? And he's like, sure, I'm up shoveling shit. Come on up. And I went, okay. And I'm like, that sounds like my whole life. This is great. Let's go. And so I went up in Santa Barbara to where he was shoveling shit and, grabbed a shovel and started helping him. And I asked him, it's interesting because I see these horses and they're just, I was like, oh, because I'd been around horses a little bit when I was a kid, but, actually, I guess my very first story would be a little different, but I've been around horses a bit when I was a kid. And so we were hanging out around these guys. And after a few months, he's like, hey, I'm going to go for a ride. Do you want to go? I'm like, sure. And the thing about it was I was such a control freak that, doing something like riding a horse was way out of my comfort zone. But I was like, okay. He put me on this sweet little horse Copper, went on this ride in the backcountry, trailered the horses up. And it was just like, I think I am in heaven. I am on a horse in this beautiful country with a man who is becoming my best friend. It was just like, wow, how did I get so lucky? But I have to tell you the very first horse story that made me terrified about horses for my second horse story, which was I was a kid and my mom was feeding my uncle's horses and it was up in Idaho and we went to visit. And so she was out there feeding them. And I went and ran and jumped on this horse's back, bareback, and took off across the field. And I don't remember the end of that story. The only thing I do remember from that story was my mom was so terrified that I was going to get thrown off and die that my only association with horses after that was, you're going to get thrown off and die. Yep. I didn't realize maybe it wasn't mine. I just figured that was a very natural fear to have of sweet creatures like horses.
Yeah, that only really kill people when A, they either deserve to die or B, they really want to die. So they kind of only ever serve a good purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's so funny how many people tell me a story where it involves something happening with a horse and the parent or guardian, but most of the time it's the parent being like, you're going to die if you ever do that again. And then they cut off these amazing creatures from their lives. Yeah.
Oh, man. You know, it's like if your parents taught you to be afraid of angels and fairies, like what?
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. Well. And so, so you met Gary. So he had a property in California at the time. I wish I could have seen that place in the backcountry up there. And then what sort of happened from there? Because I know there's a lot of other cool stories. But
so one of his horses is just sweet, beautiful creature named Copper, who she's one of those horses that you could put anything on her back and she would take care of it. In that case, that meant me. And he had another horse whose name was Playboy, who lived up to his name. This horse, man, he would run away with you if you didn't have a firm hold on his mouth. And he was he was a thoroughbred who'd been on the racetrack also. And Gary got him for a cheap price because the owner was like, you can take this piece, because I can't get him to do anything. And welcome to Playboy. And God, I can't talk about Playboy without crying, because this creature, we would we'd go for a ride, or we'd go up there and run him around or do whatever. And after just a few weeks of being there, after I just learned that I could ride and I was comfortable riding, he would run around the ring when we were running them before we'd go out and ride. He would run around the ring and he would stop in front of me and do this. Like, I've never seen a horse do that, but we didn't think anything of it. And he did this for weeks. Okay. And we would run him off like, what are you doing? Keep running, you lazy bastard, and so we were out riding one time out in the backcountry, and we stopped for lunch. And after lunch, I was like, Gary, can I ride Playboy? And he was like, you want to ride what? You want to ride who? What? And I have no idea why I even asked this question, because this was, once again, a former racehorse, somebody who you had to know how to ride, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, and the thing I love about Gary is he doesn't ever just say no. He always asks a question. And he was like, yes, no. I get a yes. Okay. And he was thinking to himself, he's like, well, if he runs away from him, throws him off, if Dain gets hurt, I've got my cell phone. I can call, and get medical attention back here, get him medevaced, and take care of him or whatever. So oh my God, I climb up on this creature. And as soon as I get on his back, I'm holding the reins, and he looks up at me like, my man. And there is, I don't know how to describe it. If you've ever had it, you've had it. We've each had our own experience like this, if we've had it, but it's one of the most beautiful things that has ever existed. Like it felt like being so cared for and so seen and I'm like, oh my God. So we're going along and at a certain point I kick him into a canter, because that's part of the reason I want to ride him, because I want to see how he runs. Right. And yeah, hello. And the reins are fucking dropping down to the ground practically. I have no hold on this horse's mouth at all. Okay. And we go around this turn, and my butt starts coming out of the seat. And this horse, while running around this turn, moves his butt under me so I don't lose the saddle, and keep going around the turn. And I just I cried the whole ride, and I screamed and I laughed, and I was just like, whatever this is why we are alive. Yeah. This right here is why we are alive. And it was interesting because that horse taught me how to ride. And one of the other interesting parts about him was there are several times where I fell off of him. And well, not several. I don't know what several is actually to anybody but me. But there were times where I fell off, and we'd be out there in the backcountry, and I would fall off, and he would come back and, put his head down and put the reins in my hand. And I'm like, oh, and Gary mentioned this several times. He's like, horses don't do that. And I'm like, oh, Gary's just saying shit. Right. And so we had just had a conversation. Because what he was trying to get me to recognize was how unique this experience is. Given this was like my second experience with the horse, the first one, not quite acknowledged as the gift that it was by others. So he was trying to get me to acknowledge this is different. But for me, it was like, yeah, Gary's just telling stories. So we had just had a conversation. He was trying to get me to acknowledge it. I'm like, yeah, Gary, right. So one of the things Playboy and I loved to do was run. Okay. So we run up this hill, and Gary's back at the bottom of the hill on copper. And these cows come out of the bushes and spook him. He does a 180-degree turn, throws me off, and runs back down the hill. And I'm like, wait a minute. What do you mean run back down the hill? You always come and put the reins in my hands, right? And he runs back down the hill, and Gary can't catch him. And finally, as I get closer to Gary and Playboy lets Gary catch him, and he walks him over to me, and he puts his head down, looks me straight in the eye. And the communication was, see, I could be like a normal horse. I just choose not to for you. And I was like, oh my fucking God, are you kidding me? And yeah, that's my Playboy story.
Wow. Wow. And, I know over the years, because you guys had, a relationship or whatever, you were his person, he was your horse for many, many years. But what did he lead you into from there? Like, what did he show you that you then took? Because you have and do own many horses in both Texas and Costa Rica. Like, where did it carry you forward into your horse journey?
Well, it made it a vital contributory part of my life.
Yep.
And while saying that, I want to address another thing that excuse me, that for me, I want to let people know about, because part of what occurred was like, I have this amazing gift, but I wasn't fully receiving it except in rare times where I was receiving me more. And so what would happen is, I started traveling all the time, and, I'd be home in Santa Barbara. I would maybe have a short window of time to go see him, and I'd be like, oh, let me do this instead. And it was almost like I was, excuse me. It was like I was keeping myself away from that beauty that he was showing me, and that space of this amazingness. And so came to a point after owning him, I guess for about 10 years, that he got cancer. And, we had the vet out. The vet's like, well, he's probably got between 6 and 12 months. He ended up living another 5 years. But when he got cancer, I'm like, I am so sorry. I have not been receiving you. I have been having my head up my butt, basically. It's just more beauty than I've been willing to allow myself. And so part of that was I started looking for other places in my life where I wasn't receiving the gift of what was right in front of me. And he showed me that.
Wow.
Without that from him, I don't know, I don't know that I would have been able to see as many of the things in my life that I have and still do. And then, so when he finally died, Gary texted me. We had moved to Texas and we buried him on our ranch. And I was like, please come back. I'll do better next time. It was like, I was just like, wow, I fucked that one up, and I'm sure that's not his point of view, but, it's really easy to judge yourself. And I'm like, please come back. Well, 2 years later, finally, we had this Costa Rican Paso born on our ranch. And it's Playboy. His name is now Guapo, which means beautiful. And this is the biggest Costa Ricense horse we have. The biggest Costa Ricense horse most people have ever seen. He's getting close to 17 hands.
Wow.
He's 16.3 at this point, I think. We haven't measured him in a while. But climbing on is an experience, and it is so fucking awesome. This guy is so beautiful, and he looks like the spitting image of Playboy in a slightly different body. Playboy was a gray. This guy's a gray. And 90% of the time I climb on, I'm like, hi, Playboy, and he's like, hello. And he has a similar personality. One of the things Playboy would do, I mean, I could just talk about this, forever, but like one of the things he would do is, because I spent a lot of time judging myself, and I used to spend a lot of time in my head and all kinds of things. And I would climb on him in that case where I wasn't really present with him. And every single time I would climb on in that space, he would start the ride with bucking.
Yep.
Now, the wonderful part about him is he doesn't really know how to buck. He doesn't know how to get his head down. So his head would be up and he would be bucking. And it would make me laugh my ass off every single time. And once I started laughing and I was over my shit, he's like, okay, we can go on a ride now. And people would see this and go, how are you riding that horse? I'm like, oh no, it's a thing we do. It's our thing. He's just getting me to be here again. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. There's so much in that. Like, it's so interesting how horses just desire us to receive like everything from them. Like they're just so, it's almost like they're an open book of gifting, that they'll literally like gift as much as we can receive. So as our capacities to receive from them increases, it's like the gifting increases as well.
Totally.
And it's so interesting how much we judge ourselves that we haven't done good enough by them, or like, and in their world, and even, you know, when they die eventually, like they don't ever have this point of view of like, that you've done something wrong by me. Like, it's just so interesting how, for me, I always see horses as in a way, they have a lot of the innate characteristics that I aspire to, like this limitless gifting, no judgment, no concept of time. Like they live truly in 10-second increments, if not less than that. Like, yeah, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about any of your other experience or stories with the horses around that, but just from what you were talking about, just the sheer amount of what they have to give us is limitless.
It truly is. Like, and it's exactly that. It's like they already are so much of what we aspire to be.
Yeah.
And and simultaneously, what I've realized also, in a slight sidetrack, is that the greater we're willing to become, the greater they can be.
Yeah.
You know, and so, and here's the other funny part is, have you ever, you know, been around somebody who, you know, will be around you, whatever, have whatever points of view, and then they see you a year or 2 years later, they're like, oh my God, you know what? You are so much nicer than you were, something like that. And what's really happened is they have changed. They're no longer as mean. You know, we do that with our horses. We're like, oh, you're so different. It's like, no, they have been them. You're the one who has changed, you know?
Yeah.
Always, because they don't function from a point of view. They're just who they are. Yeah,
they just show up and they just be them. And I love what you said, though, where we're willing to be more, how they will always meet us at that level that we're at. I just took my horse to a clinic last week. It was a 2-day clinic where it's a riding clinic. So you're doing a lot of riding. And, you know, the instructor was like, wow, Sarah, I know you've ridden that horse here before. And I noticed him last time you were here. But this time she was like, can I ride him? And everyone's like, she never rides people's horses. And they're like, I asked her to ride my horse and she said no. And I was like, yeah, you can ride him, go for it. And she's like, but even then she's like, I rode him and you know what? He's a great horse, but he's way better for you than he would ever be for me.
Yeah.
And it really also gave me this sense of, because he has his quirks and his personalities, and where in the past I've tried to be like, no, you can't act that way, you can't behave that way. And now I'm just like, dude, you do you. And he loves to buck as well. He's a real like, I need to get this out. And it used to scare me. And now I'm like, I laugh. I'm like, dude, if you need to buck, you just go for it. I'm going to sit in this saddle and I won't go anywhere. But it was just, when you said that, it was interesting to see this riding coach and how she saw the difference in us because of where I was willing to go and where he was willing to come with me.
Yeah.
Is there, because I've heard a lot of your stories throughout the years with horses, and I would love the world to hear more about them as well. Can you share with us, like, learning to be, because I think Gary taught you a lot about riding, right? He was one of your...
Oh, yeah.
And how was your, because you're a great rider. I mean, I've ridden with you many times and you are a beautiful rider. But can you talk a little bit about how that journey went, riding with someone like Gary, riding a horse like Playboy and the other horses, and what that was like?
Oh, goodness. There's so much. And one of the interesting things is Gary does Gary in the way Gary does Gary, you know? And so when he's showing you how to ride, there's so much awareness that he has, and also energetic connection. But the interesting part is when he yells at you and goes, don't do that, stop, you know? And what I took away from that is, oh, I'm wrong. And I had this vague but that was my whole story of my whole life. Hi, my name is Dain. I am wrong. Nice to meet you, you know? And so I carried this forward with me. Gary taught me everything, you know, and how to use my body on a horse, how to get into the horse's head, how to ask the horse rather than force the horse, how to ask the horse and put it in their head to get them to do what you'd like them to do and be the energy of that. And, you know, and we would go to there's so many times where somebody would, you know, offer to sell Gary a horse. And so he would have me ride the horse so he could see how it was. And it was very interesting. because for me, I realized I don't have any fear. I just have absolute joy at being on these creatures. And I love, an intense animal. And one of my favorites is an animal that will just run like a bat out of hell. There's certain horses you get on, and within 2 strides, they're at a dead run. And it's like straddling a freight train that's got no freight, just so good. So he'd put me on horses like this, and half of them had no mouth control at all. And all I could do was stay on, and Gabe be like, no, I'm not going to take that one. I'm like, smart choice, but he, it's like he was always there to give little hints, but also his fundamental idea that the horse is conscious, so are you. The more you're willing to be that, the more connection you can have with them, the greater your ride will be, but the greater your life is going to be. And Gary's my favorite quote from Gary, everything I needed to learn in life, I learned from a horse. Yeah. That is so friggin' true. Yep. It is. I mean, God, so many things. I learned that I was an exuberant person, that I actually like the thrill of going fast and doing fast from Playboy. Before that, I was like, no, I'm just a nice guy who just likes to, do slow things and mental things. And, and yet I used my body my whole life. I just never really acknowledged it, And the very first time we were, this is weird. We were, I guess, I'm not sure if this is before Playboy or what, I don't know the timing, but we went to Costa Rica at this resort where they had horseback riding, and everybody else would wake up and go. And I was like, no, I'm not going to go. Not going to go. And I slept in literally for 4 mornings in a row. And on the 5th morning, I'm like, look, I will go. And if I'm not awake, wake me up. I don't care if you have to pour cold water on my face. So I was like, okay. So I'm sitting on this horse and I'm looking at the ground as we're riding. And Gary's like, what are you doing? I'm like, gotta make sure he doesn't put his foot in a hole, because that's what I learned from the terrified people that taught me about horseback riding without ever putting me on a horse. And so he's like, Dain, you don't get it. He's like, the whole purpose of this is so that you can ride and enjoy everything around you. The horse knows where it's putting his feet. He wants to put his foot in a hole less than you want him. You get the idea. He doesn't want that any more than you want that for him, And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, plus they've been walking the earth for at least 50,000 years. They know what they're doing. And I was like, oh my God. So I relaxed. And then I was on this horse where something with one of the girls that was a friend of mine that I gave a hug to, that one of the cowboys was attracted to. And so he put me on a runaway horse. And it was awesome.
Little did he know they're your favorite kind.
Exactly. Little did I know. Little did he know. I'm like, thanks for the best ride ever. He's like, oh, I thought I was going to kill that chingon. And and it was so cool. And after that, I was like, oh my God, like I'm not who I thought I was. And horses have shown me this continuously. I'm not who I thought I was. I'm not as small. I'm not as unhappy. I'm not as controlled and controlling,
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you have a creature that's there that has your back in such a way, you can explore anywhere,
Yeah, you can
be that.
Yeah. Wow. And that's the whole thing with, and just circling back, you mentioned about Gary's way of teaching where he gives you those pointers, but he's also someone that desires for you to learn as a horse person, as a rider. And, he then developed this specialty within Access Consciousness called Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider, which is such an amazing class to attend, where you get to be empowered to know what you know about horses. I've attended many clinics. I've done a lot of, study and research on different people's methods and modalities around training horses, and none of them teach you to know what you know. Every single one of them teaches you to follow what they know. Otherwise, you're wrong and you're dumb and you're going to break the horse. And then the horse is going to be ruined for life and you're going to be the worst person in the world. And then you come to these conscious horse, conscious rider classes and you're laying on them bareback and you're riding and you're enjoying. And hey, you might fall off. Something might go wrong. And then we have all of these tools to work through that and through anything that comes up. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a shout out to what Gary created and what all of us are creating with the tools of access consciousness combined with horses. Like it's
yeah, it's really beautiful. And so, like you said, so different.
Yeah.
Everything else I've seen out there is about the structure, not about your unique capabilities and the horse's consciousness and the horse's awareness and the place, the beauty of that intersection. And it's interesting. I don't know if that's, because there are some amazing riders out there that are in the horse's head. You can clearly tell. I don't know if it's just that they be it so much they don't know how to talk about it, or it is whatever it is. But I totally agree with that shout out. And I was just thinking as you were talking about that, with that trust exercise where you lay back on a horse bareback, it's like, I mean, how do you, there's no way to leave that experience without feeling supported by the whole universe. And this beautiful large creature, you realize how their 1,000-pound size is such an amazing contribution to literally having your back. It's wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what I've learned along the way with them is because I always thought that you could, like, you're always taught you can like wreck a horse or you're going to do something wrong and the horse is going to be, then it's, you've ruined it. But what I've realized with horses is they're the most forgiving creature ever. Like if you fuck something up and you're like, oh, sorry, dude, I probably did that a little bit wrong. They're like, whatever. I mean, if you go in at them and you're being a real dick about things and you're, not being self-aware of what's going on, yes, you're going to turn the horse into some sort of psychopath. But you can fuck up every day with your horse and be like, sorry, dude, I did that a little bit wrong. And they're like, I don't care. Let's go and try something else. Let's do it again. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. So just quickly, I'd love to hear, I know you own, and I've ridden a few of your horses. Most recently in El Lugar, I rode Coronel, who is like, there's something about your horses as well. So sorry, I'm going in a million directions here, but let's talk quickly first about what is it you be with your horses? Because you have horses in Texas, you have horses in Costa Rica where, and you talked a bit about it with Playboy, where even though you might not see them except for a few times a year, because like I said, I've ridden your horses and all of your horses have this kind gentleman energy, very much your energy. Like, can you talk a little bit about how you create that with these animals that you don't see all that often? Is it a cognitive thing or?
Oh, it's definitely not cognitive. I was going to say, I wish I could. I just be me with them.
Yep.
And I don't, Playboy taught me to not hold back my energy, which was, which was something that I'd learned with every other interaction with any other being, hold back your energy. You're too much, you're whatever. And Playboy was like, bring it on, and, and so the other thing is I just asked to stay connected to them. And like, it's an interesting thing to have a horse like Playboy, now Guapo. And because there are certain horses that, and I also have another one here in Texas called Gitano. And there's one in Costa Rica named Diamante. And these horses where there's just something that is so, you're so theirs, they're so yours, that it almost, and what used to happen was it would eclipse what I could have with another horse, because it was so something, and this is not quite that, like this being, we don't have that much together like I have with these guys, kind of thing. And then I realized that I was limiting. It wasn't about what I thought it was. It was like the specialness or the whatever with Guapo is what it is, but that doesn't limit what I can have him be with Cornell, or my other horse down there, Tequila, which if you haven't, he lives up to his name, this boy. And before I go down there, for a few weeks before I go down there, they start running him. So he's used to running and and also stopping. Okay. It's not just, hey, dead run all the time, but they get him well exercised before I go down there. So he and I just run over the roads, through the fields. It is friggin' amazing. But as I'm talking, I'm realizing that there's this acknowledgement of their being that I am for them. And it's just, it's a space of utter gratitude, but also an acknowledgement of, I see you, be you, be everything you are, please. And it just like Playboy showed me, I didn't have to turn myself down for him. I show them, you don't have to turn yourself down for me. And yeah, I may look like a person, but that's just my costume, like let's be together. And I don't know how much time we have, but I got to tell some Diamante miracle stories before we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Diamante, this horse that Gary actually bought, and Gary would go to get on him, and between first foot in stirrup to second foot over, Diamante would be about 20 feet that way every time Gary went to get on him. So we would put him in a stall and Gary would get on him, and, and Gary would ride him, and Gary's like, this horse does not want me. He's like, Dain, I have done this so many times. Dain, you want to ride him? I'm like, sure, why not? Right up my alley, right? So I get on this horse, and it was like a Playboy experience, but slightly different, because Diamante is like, I hate people, but I'll let you ride me and we'll have the best time ever. It's so interesting. And so we have had this horse and I riding, and the beauty of riding in Costa Rica is you get riding that if you're, doing sort of a rent situation, you don't get anywhere else almost. And with where we would ride him, we would run down the mud roads, we would run up the hills, we would run everywhere. You're maybe noticing a theme. I love to run, and also be in control simultaneously. But there was one time where he and I were running up this hill, and there was this tall grass that was a little taller than surrounding. And it wasn't until we got to it that I realized that it was a hole that was about probably 5 meters by 5 meters. And it was this grass that was growing taller than others, but that grass was way tall because the hole was about 4 feet deep. It was not until so we're at a dead run again, as we often are. And his back feet are here and his front feet are here to take the next step, right? And I and he see at the same time that there is nowhere to step. We are going to fall into a 4-foot hole. And something we did, I and he together, I will still remember this moment and many others for the rest of my life, was like, I pull up on the reins, and somehow his step is not in the hole. It is on the other side of this 15-meter hole. Wow. Now, explain that. Yeah. Not possible. And anybody who thinks things are logical and linear will be like, oh, you just didn't know what it was. Nuh-uh. I had a lot of people go, what the fuck just happened? You should be dead. I'm like, I know, but we're not, There was another time where there was this guy who put himself in the advanced riding group, even though he was barely a beginner rider. We were walking through a stream, and we go up this mud embankment to carry on our ride. And this embankment is, we're talking, I don't know how many feet tall. He stops right at the top. Wow. Diamante and I are right behind him. We start climbing up, and Diamante has to stop, except it's so steep and the mud is so mud that we start not only sliding back, but he starts falling over backwards on top of me. And what's behind us and what's under us is stream and rocks, right? So he starts falling over on top of me like this. And in my mind, it was such a similar energy to that other thing where I'm like, And so now somehow he's turned sideways. And this is all apparently occurring in slow motion because this occurred within seconds of other people's time, right? And so now he's like this. And I'm like, oh, dude, shit. And I remember sort of falling off of him and like, you know how you do that and like push your feet up, hoping that
you're going to stop this 500 kilo animal from,
you know? And so this occurs, and just moments later, I remember opening my eyes and I'm looking through water and I'm like, I was kind of like, am I still alive? Huh. And, you know, being a doctor, I'm like, okay, can I feel my toes? I wiggle my toes. I'm like, I can move my arms, all this stuff. I'm like, okay. So I managed to like push myself up out of the, you know, the stream or the river we were going through. And I'm like, holy shit, we didn't die. And Diamante is still on his, he had just stood up and he was standing right beside me. And this lady over here is like, holy shit. She's like, I don't know what you did. She's like, she's like, you did something, number one. And I don't know what you did, but I'm glad you did. She said, but number two, like whatever you did to keep him from falling on top of you. But number two, when he went to stand up, his hoof was within an inch of your head, but he made sure not to stand on your head. And I was like, that is my boy. That right there is my boy. And you can't, man, you can't explain that to people, but that's my boy, that miracle right there. Yeah. And there was one other time. Yeah. What were you going to say?
Go.
No, there's one other time where we were running in Costa Rica again. Of course, that's where he lives, right? We were running and there was this, it was like shallow water. And we were running again, dead run through this water that's probably 18 inches deep. And he's managing to run through it. And I'm like, you okay running? He's like, sure. But there were these reeds across it, or these like vines across it that caught his legs. So what happens is we are running and he catches and he goes down, head over, you know, ass over, and goes down like this. I don't know exactly what happened because I fell off to the side and flipped and rolled and was running. Like I didn't fall and hit the ground. I rolled and landed and got and had the momentum. I was on my feet and I was running, and I look over and he's running beside me. And he had just literally, he did the same thing. Like we both went doot to doot. It's like, are you fucking, did that just happen? And yeah, it happened because we were both covered in mud, you know, so I knew it wasn't my delusional thing. And these are miracles, you know?
Yeah.
But with the horse, I don't know. It's with the horse, with me, with us. It's like, there you go. Those are my stories.
Yeah. And it's so amazing because within that, it's like how much this creature is willing to have your back. Like this, another thing about horses that I find so amazing is their complete lack of need. They don't have a need for anything. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to take care of him because he will feed me or he will blah, blah, blah. It's like they don't desire to need or want of anything. And that's why they're so happy to share themselves. They're happy to share you. It's like this thing where you can have these amazing relationships and adventures and miracles with all of the horses because they're all willing to be that for you. And I know some of them are more special than others. And Diamante being such a cool example of a horse that completely and utterly has your back. And just within that, like how you don't even want to explain any of that. Like it's because automatically you're like, well, what happened? And like how? And it's just your willingness to, is it just your willingness to be there with him and be whatever shows up? Or because I feel like this is possible for everyone and everything in every moment. Like,
yeah, I don't know how to put words to it. I know that I am more willing to receive miracles than most people.
uh-huh.
And somehow we are able to create them. And I've created them with Playboy and Guapo also. You know, it's like, and I agree, this is what is and should be available for us. But I mean, it's such an interesting thing because the first experience of Playboy, moving his butt under me while I'm a total novice rider riding this former racehorse, and just that alone, novice rider riding racehorse, this horse doesn't take care of anybody unless you totally control him. And he's like, I got your back, just that is like, wow, that's a miracle in itself. But these things that are like the transmutation of reality itself and physical reality are something that Diamante showed me. And I'm like, I don't know why, I don't know how, but dear God, am I grateful that, because in two of those cases, I could have and would have been easily dynamically broken beyond repair, but I wasn't because of us. He's willing, and I think that's an area where he's willing to be the miracle that I'm willing to be and receive, and I'm willing to be the miracle he's willing to be and receive. And also there's this thing, like we used to run up hills and run downhill, okay? And, horse people don't tend to run downhill.
That's a no-no.
Because they like staying alive and I don't know, things like that, whatever, something. I didn't have that qualm and I didn't know I wasn't supposed to run downhill. So I ran downhill. Hello. And you should have seen the hills we ran down. I mean, it wasn't quite Man from Snowy River, but it was as close as any other person usually gets to it. But I've always known, like, we got this. And I wouldn't have done it had I not known that. But there's something about that I wish I could put words to it. I really do, because I would like more people to access their ability to access it. And I'm not sure how many people are willing to, or how many people have to think about it and understand it first. Thing is, I didn't think about any of this. I didn't understand this. It just is. It's possible, know?
Yeah. And I think, because, I'm like, oh, okay, so, and me 5 years ago would have been like, well, what do I need to do to recreate a situation like that?
Right.
Whereas now I know with the tools of access consciousness, and Gary mentioned, I think he was facilitating Viv Adcock in the Being the Source class, and he used this term, being available for possibilities, like this availability for anything to show up. And I think, horses are so great in that scenario because they're available for any possibility. And they're so willing to invite us to it. And if we can get out of that needing to define and control our interactions and our moments with horses, I think that's where you get to go to those places where, and, a miracle is like, it can be the smallest of things, like even getting on your horse and feeling that communion with them and with the planet, and having you in totality for a minute or 2 minutes or 10 minutes, your brain's switching off and you having peace and space in your world. Like all of these things where they're willing to show us like the true essence of ourselves and what living is really about. It's just something I think with this podcast and talking to people like you and facilitating Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider is really the invitation I desire to have for people in the world is to play with that, to go there. And
totally. And that's a thing for me. It's like I almost, you mentioned that right there is the ongoing miracle. It really, it so dynamically increases the quality of living that we have. And I think that is the great gift of these amazing creatures. And, I talk about these other miraculous things because it's fun to talk about and also to acknowledge. And also for me, I get a deeper acknowledgement of, holy shit, that did actually happen.
Yep.
Because after the fact, you're like, oh, whatever. But in acknowledging it, it's like, okay, that's possible.
Yep.
What else is possible?
Yep.
And
and sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, these are the stories that are really actually the stories that inspire people, because you're not sitting here going, I'm so fucking amazing because I did this. You're like, oh my God, it was this miracle. It was so miraculous. And that to me is where other people hear that and they're invited to seek that out, to go there and find that for themselves. And that's why, having these conversations as well, it's truly about inspiring people to know that it's possible and for them to go and find it for themselves. It's like access consciousness. That's what it is. It gives you all of these tools to invite you to go and create a phenomenal life. Like it's really the essence of what it is. And that's why I love your stories, because it makes me go, oh, I want to go find that. I want to seek out more of that. I want a life that is constantly that level of miracle and miraculousness.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I am so glad you said all of that, because that's exactly, for me also, that's exactly it. Is like, here, it's about us contributing to us, us contributing to all of us.
Yes.
And so, the story someone might tell piques something in your awareness of what, should be possible. And you're like, oh, well, if somebody's having it, well, then maybe it actually is. I don't have to believe it's not anymore. How do I find that? Totally.
Yeah. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. There was something else then that I wanted to say, but it's gone. The train left the station, as they say.
I know that one.
See ya. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I'm not sure if there's anything else we want to leave people with. I'd love to invite you back on in a few months' time. I mean, we're going to be fortunate enough to spend some time together in El Lugar later on in the year and ride some horses together again. I always, whenever I speak to anyone on this podcast and we talk about El Lugar in Costa Rica, my big invitation for you is, if there's any possibility that you can ride and you can go there and explore this property, explore the horses that are on this property and ride there, truly like something out of a fairy tale, like nothing else that I've ever experienced in this world before so far. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the listeners with, Dain, before we finish up?
Well, I'd like to acknowledge what you said about El Lugar being like a fairy tale. It's like a space beyond time, and the element that the horses provide is inestimable. It is, but the whole place actually is that, and that's why we created it, because we would like a place like that to exist on this planet for people to be able to go and stop being so peoply. Anyway, more horsey, No, I would just say it's like, probably a lot of you listening already ride, and, and what I've found is there are certain people who ride and they think they're great. And so there are certain people that ride, think they're great, and then they're closed off to anything else. Of course, if you're listening to this, you're probably not one of those people. But if you've been around somebody like that, don't judge yourself according to them. And if you ride and you don't think you're that good, there's not any of us that is as good today as we will be tomorrow. And there's not any of us that think we're really that great. We just, it's for the love of being present with these animals and having the joy of it. So ride from the joy, ride for the joy. And, and even that doesn't have to have a typical characteristic, because they will show you more every time if you let them, and you can show them more every time if you're willing to. This is truly one of the spaces where communion on this planet exists, and have fun, enjoy it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Yes, ride from the joy of it. Ride the horse and ride your life from the joy of it.
Yes. And as Gary says, how you ride your life is how you ride a horse.
Mm-hmm.
Or how you ride a horse is how you ride your life. So take that, my friends. Wisdom from the Douglas.
Write that one down.
That's right.
Thank you so much. I feel like there's 10 billion other things. So let's book another one in a few months or whenever. I'd love to hear more stories and chat more about this. But for now, thank you so much, Dain, for joining us here. Thank you for you being in this world. I'm so grateful for you, my friend. And I can't wait to see you on an adventure again soon.
That is so mutual. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.